Rome, February 1564. An 88-year-old man sits in front of a fireplace, methodically destroying a lifetime of his own sketches. Each sheet of paper curls and blackens, taking decades of anatomical studies and discarded ideas into the ash. This is Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. To the public of the 16th century, he was Il Divino, the divine creator. But in the privacy of his home, he spent his final days feeding his work to the flames, desperate to hide the grueling human effort that made his divine talent possible. He was born in Caprese, as the Middle Ages were giving way to the lens of science and philosophy. While the world was expanding, Michelangelo's childhood was shrinking. He lost his mother at 6 and spent his early years enduring a father who beat him for choosing a paintbrush over a textbook. He lacked stability, so he sought control in the one place he could master it, the physical world. His lifelong pursuit of anatomical perfection functioned as a psychological defense, a way to build a reality more predictable than the chaos of his youth. That drive showed itself when he was just 15 years old. While replicating an ancient sculpture of a faun in the Medici Gardens, he caught the attention of Lorenzo the Magnificent. Lorenzo joked that an old creature like a faun wouldn't still possess a perfect set of teeth. Michelangelo didn't just acknowledge the critique, he reacted with intensity. He took his chisel and carved a single tooth out of the stone, shaping the marble until the gum appeared to have been hollowed out by the root. He had established his lifelong method. He would spend the next 7 decades bending the physical world until it matched the anatomical ideal inside his mind. To master that ideal, he needed to understand the human body with a precision that was, at the time, illegal. He struck a secret deal with a local prior, sleeping in the Basilica of Santo Spirito, so he could spend his nights in the dark, dissecting rotting human corpses to map the secrets of muscle and bone. This morbid study resulted in works like the Pietà. Look at the way the marble yields under Mary's fingers. He achieved a lifelike elasticity in the stone that made the cold material appear like soft, yielding flesh. When he heard visitors credit the sculpture to a rival, his pride flared. He snuck back into the church under the cover of night and carved his own name across Mary's chest, the only time he would ever sign his work, a permanent mark of his mastery over the skeptics. Soon after, he took on a challenge that had defeated Florence for decades. A 5-meter slab of marble had been left abandoned because it was too narrow and damaged for any other artist to use. Michelangelo claimed he could find the perfect human form already trapped inside it. The resulting David is an engineering marvel. Michelangelo deliberately oversized the head and the hands, knowing the statue would sit high above the viewer. From the ground looking up, those distortions would balance out, forcing the eye to see a perfectly proportioned figure. He was learning to manipulate human perception, using his knowledge of anatomy to create an illusion of perfection that nature itself couldn't provide. Despite his success as a sculptor, Pope Julius II ordered him to lay down his chisel and pick up a brush. He was tasked with painting the massive, sprawling ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo deeply resented the command, repeatedly telling the Pope that he was no painter, but he was eventually forced to comply. He engineered his own scaffolding to reach the ceiling and spent 4 years painting over 500 square meters while looking straight up. The project didn't just take his time, it took his health, leaving him with chronic pain and a permanently damaged spine. In the creation of Adam, he included a detail that modern viewers often overlook. The red cloak behind the figure of God matches a cross-section of the human brain, prompting a long-standing debate over whether Michelangelo was painting the origin of life or the biological origin of the divine. This masterpiece was not born of inspiration, but of sheer, agonizing physical labor that the artist himself never wanted to perform. After the chapel, he returned to marble with a sculpture of Moses. It represents a near-obsessive level of anatomical detail. On the right forearm, Michelangelo included the fusiform extensor, a muscle that only flexes when the pinky finger is lifted. Moses is lifting his pinky, and the stone reflects that exact hyperspecific tension. The detail was so absolute that it appeared to strain the artist's own sanity. According to legend, when the statue was completely finished, Michelangelo violently struck the marble knee with his heavy iron hammer and shouted, "Why don't you speak?" His unyielding nature eventually turned into open defiance. When he returned to paint the Last Judgment on the altar wall, he filled the space with a chaotic mass of nudity and included two men kissing in the corner, a subversive gesture in the face of the church's strict authority. Even as he achieved godlike control over his art, his own personal world was rapidly descending into complete chaos, marked by political war and a growing alienation from the very rulers who funded his work. By his later years, Michelangelo was a wealthy man, yet he lived in squalor like an impoverished laborer. He spent his final decades pivoting toward architecture, designing structures that would project the dominance of Rome over the landscape. He redesigned the Piazza del Campidoglio, orienting the entire space away from the ancient Roman Forum and toward the heart of the modern church. The star-patterned pavement and geometric symmetry forced the chaotic physical world into his own ordered vision. He had moved beyond the canvas and the stone, ending his life by engineering the physical geography of the world itself. This brings us back to the dying man burning his sketches. He wanted to erase these intricate studies because he wanted history to believe his art materialized without the years of failures and grueling practice visible on these pages. He cultivated an image of a man with divine powers, but the reality was a stubborn, physically broken artist who bled for every inch of marble he carved. His final act was one of defiance. In death, his body was secretly smuggled out of Rome in a merchant's cart to avoid the Pope's interference, allowing him to finally return to his home in Florence. The finished statues and vibrant frescoes suggest a divine perfection, but the true power of Michelangelo's story lies in the agonizing human labor required to create them.